What's up, y'all? I'm here with the UFC predictions: Tyron Woodley versus Gilbert Burns. You know what, guys? It's a decent card. It's a decent card. There's some good fights. I think, I usually do the main card. But if I was to look for the prelims, what's on the prelims? Yeah, you got Caitlin Chukagian coming back to fight Antonia Shevchenko, if I'm saying that right. Jamal Hill's fighting. Tim Elliott's back. Louis Samoka is fighting. So you got some decent guys on the prelims. It's like, I know some people ragging on the card, but it's not that bad. Some decent fights. This is usually what you should expect from a fight night card. But we start off the main card with Mackenzie Dern versus Hannah Cyphers. Strawweight bout. This is a hard one because I haven't been really impressed with either of them in their last two fights. Mackenzie looked, I know Mackenzie's really good at jiu-jitsu. She has all the accolades and stuff like that. But sometimes you see it with certain grapplers. The transition is super hard, for them to even not just adjust their grappling and their striking, but other way around. Not to just adjust their striking, but their grappling is kind of hard to adjust it to MMA because there's just certain rules in a grappling tournament or in a grappling scene that there isn't, like in wrestling. You can't stall. You have to go forward. In a fight, or if it's a street fight, if I'm trying to take you down, right, you can back up, and it'd be hard. It makes it harder, like in fights, like against, you see it sometimes with Israel Adesanya when he fights. It's kind of like the reason it's kind of hard for guys to take him down. He has decent takedown defense, but he, I don't want to say he backs up, but he's always, circling the octagon. He's always using his footwork, and it's just kind of hard to like trap a guy like that. And a lot of guys can use that, and I've seen it. Like, she has a hard time taking girls down, like Mackenzie. But when she's on point, she's on point. When she gets down there, there ain't nothing that doesn't translate. She just has a hard time getting it down. Man, she was it Amanda Rebus? She fought. Man, she looked like, there's a lot of stuff, and she was coming off a pregnancy, right? So it's like, I don't want to use that as an excuse, but it is what it is. And then you got Hannah Cyphers. She, I don't know, man, about Hannah, bro. She just doesn't even look like she enjoys fighting if you look at her if you look at her face. But she did not look good against Angela Hill. Angela's good, man. Nothing against her. Angela used to be ranked, so it's not a bad loss to have. But I don't know, man. She looked, when I seen her get caught up in full mount, she just looked so lost against Angela. So it's hard because Mackenzie's, I don't know about her, but I'm gonna go Mackenzie Dern. I think that's the smart decision. Then you got Roosevelt Roberts versus Brock Weaver. This is an interesting lightweight bout. Roosevelt Roberts is a big guy, and usually that's his like advantage is how tall he is. But now he's fighting someone that's kind of near the same height as him. Roosevelt has really looked interesting. He's a swinger, but he's very adamant in his boxing. He's a good fighter. He's a decent fighter, I'd say. And then he's fighting someone who, in Brock Weaver, is a bare knuckle fighter. I've seen some of his bare knuckle fights. He's decent. I wouldn't call him a brawler, but he calls himself that. So I think he's he's a self-admitted brawler. It's an interesting fight. We saw what we saw from Brock Weaver. He was getting pieced up in his last fight, and I don't want to get. He got saved by an illegal knee, so he's coming in with a lot of proof. Roosevelt looked good in his last fight, so I'm gonna go Roosevelt Roberts. But this should be an interesting one. Brock does. It's gonna be a good fight. Brock takes one to give one. I'll say that. Next fight is Kevin Holland versus Daniel Rodriguez. This is an interesting one. Kevin Holland's coming back after his last fight. Yeah, against on the Walt Harris Overeem show, he looked really good. This is a welterweight bout, and he's and Daniel Rodriguez is one of them contender series guys. It's gonna be interesting. I think he lost to Tim Means. I'm not sure, but he lost. Yeah, he lost to Tim Means. This is a hard one, man. Kevin Holland's he pisses me off, but he's talented though. He is talented. I don't think he gets enough credit, but he's talented. His groundwork doesn't get enough credit, man. He did really, really good against Thiago Santos, who was, one of them guys that was ranked at middleweight and now, is a real contender at light heavyweight. So, but he's coming back really early. But it was a quick finish. I don't know. And Daniel, like, if I was to really describe Kevin, he's more of a Muay Thai fighter. And Daniel, it seems like he has better boxing fundamentals. So it's hard. I could see Kevin getting caught. But I'm going to go Kevin Holland. I don't know, man. This one's a hard one for me. I'm wishy-washy on this one, but I'm going to go Kevin Holland. Then you got Bligo Ivanov versus Augusto Sasaki. Man, Ivanov is tough as nails, bro. He literally is tough as nails. The man survived a fucking stab into the heart. You see it on his goddamn fucking belly, not belly button, like right near his chest and shit like that. He really impressed me against Tai Tuivasa. I had Tai Tuivasa beat. I thought Tai Tuivasa was gonna beat him in that fight, but he really impressed me. He looked really, really good. And then he impressed me against Derek Lewis. It was hard. That one was tough. I didn't think the judges robbed Ivanov. I thought you could have given that to Derek, but he did really, really good in that fight. He had a really good position. So Ivanov, and he's an AKA boy. He trains with DC. DC says it. He has the best head and arm, hip toss in the game. So and he beat Fedor and Sambo. So he's really good. Augusto Sasaki, his last fight was, I think Andrei Arlovski, right? And I didn't think he looked that good in that fight. But, he's number 13 in the heavyweight division. It is what it is. I'm going to go Ivanov, man. I think Ivanov is going to beat him. I think Ivanov is going to use his grappling, and I think he's going to get the W. Now we're to the main event, man, and I'm warning you, I might go on a Tyron Woodley rant. Nothing against Woodley, but let's look at this bout. You got Woodley ranked number 1 at the welterweight division. Last fight was Kumar Usman. Let's look at what's his record? 19-4 record. Former Missouri wrestler, Division I All-American, Hall of Famer, by the way. Has a reach of 74. Is a great. When you talk about everything he can do with his, not only just his boxing, but his wrestling, his that right leg kick it's fucking a kill. It's a killer. He's beating, he's a Hall of Famer for sure. Probably you could argue the second greatest welterweight champion of all time. Has wins over Darren Till, Damian Maia, Wonder Boy, Robbie Lawler, Carlos Condit, who else? Ray Huron, Josh Koscheck. The guy, when you look at Tyron Woodley and you ask yourself, why hasn't he translated to the fans and stuff like that? And for me, it's not the record. It's not what he's able to do. It's not the power he has in his hands. He does it to himself. It is so interesting how this guy has become probably one of the most annoying fighters on, not only just on Twitter, but on the planet. And he's so freaking talented, and he just does it to himself. We can start off when he won the championship, he was calling out people like Nick Diaz and shit like that. And I was like, dude, you gotta fight Wonder Boy. And then he has a great first fight with Wonder Boy. I always give him that. Like, I'm gonna be fair with Woodley. He has a great first fight with Wonder Boy. It was awesome. It was a good fight. And then they have another one, and he was talking crazy. He said he's gonna kill Wonder Boy, and he was saying all this like it's because I'm black and this and that. And then he has a performance like he did against Wonder Boy, and it was just a boring fight. and then he comes back and has another boring fight, and then it's like it becomes a big deal with him and Dana White. They're going back and forth, this and that, and he's saying, "Oh, I'm gonna fight Nate Diaz and this and that," and then he ends up tearing his rotator cuff, right? And then he takes a year off, right? So in that year off, they do an interim title with Colby Covington and Rafael dos Anjos, and we're all thinking, man, this is what Woodley deserves. You know, a fight with Colby Covington is a big fight, right? But it never ended up happening. You know, it never materialized. You know, injuries and just other backstage negotiations we don't know about. What ended up happening is he ended up fighting upstart and Darren Till, who was coming off of 2 wins against Donald Cerrone and Wonderboy, and just a likable guy, right? But I will say one thing about Woodley in this title defense and this thing I felt like Woodley kind of turned around. He took he became likable. He stepped away from talking about racism and about how it's because he's black or whatever and this and that. And he talked about, like, I just got to beat this kid, and probably this was one of his greatest moments as champion, one of his greatest title defenses. And this is what I thought, like, the criticism towards Woodley was unfair. He had stained himself with all the shit he said, and that's all people are going to remember him for, right? And he was acting great in that fight. And he had a great performance against Darren Till, and he's looked amazing. And, he goes and then he gets matched up with Kamaru Usman, which I was blown away. I understand Usman beat Dos Anjos and fucking, what's his name? Damian Maia. So same opponents Colby Covington beat. And I understand the debate that it doesn't matter. And Colby was just chilling, doing nothing back then. So, when we got the fight, it was interesting. I really believe Tyron Woodley was going to show. And if you look at the promotion of that fight, they were really promoting Tyron Woodley. It felt like the company had started to respect Woodley, and then he has the most lackadaisical performance. And I've been debating this in my head. Was it a bad night for Woodley, or was Usman right about him in the lead up? Usman had said that Woodley doesn't really have, he quits. In the Roy McDonald fight, he quit. He has a hard time having that back and forth fight. When it gets hard, he quits. And I thought, over time, I've just accepted the fact that that's Woodley, and I'm not a big guy with excuses. I understand it's a fight, and they're the fighters, and they're allowed to make their judgments, but you lost. Bad day, you still fought that day. And that's what we got, so that's you. And that's what I'm going to be judging it off of. And that was Woodley. That really was him. And this is when he just started being annoying, man. He got matched up. Actually, not at this point. He got matched up with Robbie Lawler, and we thought we were going to fight. And then he gets injured. Then he starts going nuts and starts freaking calling people clout chasers and stuff like that, and basically doesn't want to fight and just rather fucking make, garbage, fucking rap albums or whatever, or music videos and shit like that. And then I forgot what he said to Leon Edwards, right? And he was like, you're a nobody. You're good, but you're a nobody. I don't want to fight you. And it's like, dude, like, just fucking fight, bro. Like, what is wrong with you? And he's saying, I don't want to fight this guy. I don't want to fight this. He said, I'd beat Khabib. I think he went on Brendan Schaub's podcast, and just, not podcast, his show. I started spewing all this nonsense, and acting as if the Usman fight never happened, and acting as if he's supposed to have no, dude, you're supposed to earn it, man. And he has been just so annoying, and he's just sabotaged his own fucking career. I got there's no love lost coming from me and Woodley. He is so great, but he puts himself down. He just doesn't get it, And then after the Leon Edwards fights falls through, and he starts trying to beef with. I'm not the biggest fan of Israel Adesanya, but then you're trying to beef with Izzy, and you're trying to go back and forth and shit like that, and back and forth with Hooker. So it's like. That's Woodley in a nutshell. That's how I feel about him. I'm sorry for the rant, but now let's go to Gilbert Burns, 18-3. He has announced a good fight win streak. Uh, he's beating guys like Olivier Bin, Gunnar Nelson, and Damian Maia. He looked really good against Damian Maia. He's tall. He is taller. He's 5'10". He does have the reach disadvantage against Woodley. 71 for Gilbert, 74 for Woodley. It's an interesting matchup in terms of the fact that both guys, when you look at the way they fight and you look at their origin story, they both have a grappling start and have kind of transitioned to the striking, right? Gilbert, has had some stumps on the road, but I have really been impressed with him. I think he's really, really looked good. He does train at Hard Knocks 365 with Usman. His jiu-jitsu is phenomenal. And his striking is always getting better. His jiu-jitsu is phenomenal. Like, go look at some of his, matches with Gary Tonin and shit like that. He is good. But he did get knocked the fuck out against Dan Hooker, and it was I think it was a hook he got knocked out with, and he lost every second of that fight. But at 170, he looks rejuvenated, and it's a good matchup. It's gonna be interesting. The ways I see Woodley really winning this fight is, he has to counter this kid. He has to, and he can win this fight I think he can win this fight both of the ways he fights. He can be super aggressive like he did in the Darren Till fight, or he can lull Gilbert and he can get a knockout. For Gilbert, I would say you have to challenge that grappling. One thing about Woodley, and it boggles my mind, right? You look at who is the best wrestler at 170 in terms of credentials. It's Tyron Woodley, Division I Missouri. Like Ben Askren's retired, so he's not in the division no more. But it's all Woodley. Division I, All-American, Hall of Famer in Missouri, right? But if you ask the public, they would say Usman. When you look at credentials, Usman's actually the worst. It's Usman, Colby, and Woodley in terms of credentials. Colby's a Division I All-American. He didn't really do anything. He took, I think, fifth place. I think Woodley took a better placing, and and has a better record in college. Usman's a Division II national champion. Now, national champion is no joke, right? And that's something to be proud of. And I think that's what Usman gets a lot of slack for. But what Usman has done is he never gave up in his wrestling. Like him and Colby, they never gave up. They never. I shouldn't say gave up. They never strayed away from it. And I think Usman has gotten so good at it. He's one of the, you could argue, some of the best MMA wrestlers, in UFC right now, in the UFC. And Woodley, on the other hand, has completely strayed away from him. He has fucking power, man, on his goddamn hands. And he can fucking hit like a Mack truck, Like, Woodley can hit. And his takedown defense is decent. Like, it's really, really... At one point in time, he had the best takedown defense at the 170 division. He had stuff like 19 takedowns from Damian Maia. But the problem is if you don't use it, you're going to lose it. It's just the facts. And Woodley, you've seen it. You had a Division II kid just out-wrestle a Division I All-American Hall of Famer in Missouri. Like, go look at it. I'm not lying. Go look at Woodley's. He's a Hall of Famer in Missouri and got out-wrestled. Now, I get it. Wrestling and MMA are two different things. There's punches. There's things that, you have to do to set up your takedowns, right? But if you look at that fight, that was a one-sided ass whooping, man. And Usman proved a valuable point. And they were talking a lot of mess to each other, man, before that fight. And Woodley was talking crazy and saying that he'd stop him, this and that. So this is a very important fight for Woodley, for me. This is a career... This could be a career-changing performance. This could either end Woodley's time at the top 5 or rejuvenate this guy. To Woodley's credit, he didn't win the championship. I know a lot of people bring up the fact he's 38, but he didn't win the championship that young. He won. I think he's one of the oldest champions in welterweight history. The guy won it, I think, when he was 35 or 36. He's 38 right now. Or he might have been 34. I think he's had the belt for 4 years, so he might have been 34. But, the thing is, Woodley you can't doubt that power, man. What do they say? One of the last things to go is your power, and that's one thing you can't do. I think his wrestling has decreased. It's just natural, nothing wrong with it. I don't know if Gilbert's grappling and his wrestling takedown efficiency would be good enough for Woodley. But for Gilbert to really win this fight, he's going to have to pressure him. He's going to have to go for takedowns. He's going to have to go for clinch. He's going to have to keep Woodley guessing and mess up his rhythm. But if Woodley gets that rhythm and starts timing him, he has the best, left counter. No, right counter in the game, man. That counter he has with that right hand is beautiful. It's money. He doesn't have, when I look at Woodley's boxing, he has great fundamentals, decent footwork. Doesn't really have a jab. But that right, man, he fucking counters dudes with that, and he is so good with it. He lulls guys into it, man. And I'm going to go Woodley in this. But I have a lot of friends that told me, and a lot of people, I don't even think really believe Gilbert can win this fight if you look at it at everything in terms of every aspect of MMA and what they're good at. Like, Woodley's not that bad at jiu-jitsu, too. He's a black belt, right? So he can hold himself in that area. But so many people are rooting against Woodley because of the way he's acting. And I can't, at this point, I used to defend Woodley, But at this point, after this year, man, he's just acting like a total idiot, and he just does it to himself. It's like, dude, and I get it. So many people might want to say something about him, and I know I have a lot of friends that don't feel like they want to talk mess to him because he's black or whatever on Twitter. And it's like, no, it's not. This ain't even about being black. It's like, dude, you're just acting annoying at this point, and just people don't like the excuses and the bullshit, So for Woodley, I think he needs a knockout, even though so many people want to see him lose and so many people just want him to just go away. I think he just outmatches Gilbert in so many ways. But I got no problem, man. If y'all really want to see him lose, I don't blame you. But I've seen what's it called? I've seen Gilbert's soul leave his body, So I think Woodley takes this one. See y'all. But yeah, this is gonna be a good fight.